Hey folks, today we have a very, very special guest. Hall of Fame, legendary Hall of Famer and Valley icon, Mr. Jerry Colangelo. Mr. Colangelo, thank you for being here with us.
Nice to be with both of you.
So, for someone that has had such success like you, both in baseball, basketball, business, take us back to your childhood, where it all started, Chicago, Illinois. What was that like?
Well, a very urban kind of a setting. An Italian section of a suburb in Chicago where very much a blue-collar working class. Most of the people worked in the steel mills and the textile factories, and so I grew up in that kind of a setting. My grandfather was an immigrant from Italy who built a house out of the remnants of 2 railroad boxcars and some extra lumber, and that was the home that I had. But I look at my life and I think back that that's where it all started for me. Who I am today began with what I learned as a boy in the neighborhood about faith, about family, about helping people, about hard work. You get your roots right there and your solid foundation, and I feel very blessed that I had that kind of a beginning.
Yeah, I heard that you had a paper route growing up as a kid. Do you think that helped you kind of at an early age develop that work ethic?
I always worked. I had actually 3 paper routes. Morning, afternoon, and then a couple days a week, the local paper. So I was busy there, but I caddied. I stocked shelves at neighborhood stores. I was always out. I wasn't at home very much. I was either working or on the courts playing basketball or the fields playing baseball. So I wouldn't exchange what I had coming up for all the money in the world. I think it made me who I am.
Speaking of baseball and basketball, in high school you had 66 college offers to play basketball. Mm-hmm. What was that like, and how did that help you make connections in the world?
You know, it's when you're young, you're also dumb, and didn't have a great deal of direction. So as all these things were happening, I just kind of took it for what it was worth. Yeah, it was interesting to have interest in me from around the country in basketball and in baseball. As a pitcher, I had a number of teams that wanted to sign me, and came very close to signing with the Dodgers, which would have prevented me from going to college to play basketball also. But God had his plan all worked out, in my opinion, and I'm just kind of following through with it. So I limited my interest to just a handful of schools. I was playing high school baseball at that time, my senior year, but Michigan I had interest in, Notre Dame I had interest in, Kansas, in Illinois. Illinois was my home state school. Mm-hmm. There was a guy at Kansas by the name of Wilt Chamberlain, one of the great players of all time, and I was recruited to be a starting guard, shooting guard on that team with him. And I was certain we'd win an NCAA championship based on all that I knew. So I chose Kansas. I was there a semester. He confidentially told me he was not returning. He was going to sign with the Globetrotters for a great deal of money at the time, $75,000. This is 1957, and wait to be eligible for the NBA draft. He had to wait a year. And so that kind of set me off on a different course. I didn't necessarily want to be in Kansas if he wasn't there.
Yeah.
I would much preferred to come back to my home state school. I called the coach at Illinois. He wanted me, very much so. And again, God's plan was for that to happen. And so I laid out the second semester of my freshman year at Kansas, enrolled at Illinois with 15 hours of credit, met my wife to be, now wife of 64 years, at Illinois. So again, things happen for a reason. And yeah, I enjoyed my time at Illinois. I played basketball. I pitched a couple more years of baseball, but my arm was gone. I mean, I had injured myself. And so again, the Lord actually had me going down the right path, and it was basketball. And so the name identity, especially in the Midwest, Chicago and throughout the Midwest, led to me being offered an opportunity to go to work for someone who had a dream. And it was 3 years after I graduated from college. I went to work for a fellow named Dick Klein in the incentive marketing business, and he told me his dream was to bring pro basketball to Chicago. 6 months later, we gave birth to the Chicago Bulls. That's where I ended up. Now, some people would say, well, you were lucky, that you were at the right place at the right time. I would say, no, that really wasn't it. Again, back to God's plan, that's the way it was supposed to be. That was the script. And so I found myself as a young man in what was to become a growth industry, the NBA. Chicago franchise was the first expansion team of the modern era in 1966. And I had a lot of responsibility, but it was a mom and pop league. But over the next 2 years, further expansion took place. Seattle and San Diego came in 67. In 68, Milwaukee and Phoenix. And I was faced with making a decision, stay in Chicago with the Bulls organization, and my boss said he would relinquish the GM job in a couple of years, but it was kind of, iffy.
Yeah.
Milwaukee and Phoenix both offered me the general manager's job, and I tell the story, I left O'Hare on a cold day in February. It was 20 below. And I landed at Terminal 1, which doesn't exist anymore, at the airport. And it was in the 70s, and I smelled orange blossoms. But more importantly, what I saw in the community back in 1968 was a young, growing, new market, a new city. That's really what I saw. But I also saw a blank canvas, that this was an opportunity to paint your own portrait if given the opportunity. And so I made the decision to come to Phoenix in 1968. And I did so with 3 young children, 2, 4, and 6, my wife, 9 suitcases, and $300 in my pocket. And we started a whole new life. And it's been a wonderful, wonderful 5 decades here plus. And it's been, again, I'm very happy to continue to follow God's lead. And He's blessed me with longevity. And I'm still active and still very involved. And GCU gives me a real opportunity to be around young people like you all. That makes me feel a little bit younger. And obviously, the competitive part of me is being involved with the sports, serving as a consultant to Brian Mueller, the president. It's been fun.
Yeah. You mentioned getting in during the time of when the NBA was a growth industry and coming to Arizona and it being a blank canvas. I'm curious to know if you had to say what might be the next growth industry, whether it be a sport or anything else, what would you say that might be, the up-and-coming new thing?
Well, it's pretty obvious, I think. When you can answer your own question, because it's about AI, it's about technology, and it's moving so quickly. It's difficult for me to stay abreast of all that's happening there, because that was my background. I was a guy who had my hands involved in getting things done, and I could figure things out in my head. But technology was always a little bit of a challenge. I mean, the really high technology. And today it's over the top, for sure. But that's where it all is. I mean, if somebody wants to look at the future and say, what do I need to do to have a chance to be successful? You better learn technology and the latest as best you can and stay on top of it.
Yeah, so you come to Phoenix. Suns are a new franchise. You have basically every role there is. You have coach, manager, owner. Do you feel that a certain position was especially hard or one that you enjoyed a little more than the other?
I enjoyed it all. I mean, it was it's like do whatever's next that needs to be done. I knew I was the GM. That's what I was hired to do. I fired my very dear friend Johnny Kerr, the first coach of the Suns, and replaced him with myself because I felt I was capable of taking the team at that time and giving it a boot, and it worked. In the second year of the Suns, we made the playoffs. We had a good run after I took over the coaching reins. And we had the Lakers down 3-1 in the playoffs when they had 3 Hall of Famers. Chamberlain, familiar name,
Yeah.
Jerry West, and Elgin Baylor.
Wow.
We had them down 3-1, and they came back and beat us in a 7-game series. But we established ourselves in this community in our second year of operation. I coached one more time a couple of years later. And so things had become much more sophisticated, and there was need for more people, more management people, etc. And so everything evolved, serving in all those capacities, and then having the opportunity to buy the team in 1987, which I exercised and took it to yet another level. We built a new arena. We helped establish downtown Phoenix, and we are given a lot of credit. We were just part of a lot of efforts that were going on to make downtown viable. When I came here in '66, downtown was like a ghost town, and shopping centers were sprouting up in the valley, who are now being revitalized and have different uses, like a Paradise Valley Mall and Park Central Mall, by way of example. And so things continue to evolve, and being a part of all of that has been, I've loved it. It's exciting, and you feel like you're making contributions.
Speaking of owning a team, the Diamondbacks. You are able to make an MLB expansion team. You get them started up in 1998. In year 4, you guys win the World Series. I mean, how special is that, and how rare is it to do that right off the bat?
Well, it's more than rare. It's never been done before. So, yes, I was actually, right after we in 1993 lost in the NBA Finals to the Bulls and Michael Jordan, I was approached by a couple of town leaders, and they said, Jerry, we think we're ready for baseball, and you're the guy who could make it happen. And my original reaction was, look, my plate is full. I don't think I have the, not energy, I had the energy, but I thought it was too much. And I thought baseball at that moment needed some real help through collective bargaining, what was happening between the players and the owners and their contracts and retirement, all those things. And yet I couldn't help but think back to my Chicago days as a kid, listening to the games on radio, even before TV. And so I grew up a Cubs fan. You know, as it turned out, I was a prospect as a pitcher. I had those opportunities. So I didn't know what would happen. I was out there doing my best. If it was meant to be, it would be. So after due diligence, I got back to the 2 individuals and said, let's go for it. And in 1998, we were awarded the franchise. Actually, we were awarded the franchise a couple of years earlier. Our first season was 98. And we built a new facility. We didn't have a stadium to play in. And it was fun. I mean, I enjoyed it a great deal. We signed some great free agents like Randy Johnson. We traded for Kurt Schilling, who was we had 2 number 1 starters on our roster. We traded for Luis Gonzalez and signed Jay Bell and Matt Williams and Tony Womack and Steve Finley, and all of a sudden we had a roster, and we had great success, and it was an amazing time. It was the first real championship for any team in in this state. And so we established baseball as a real thing in our community.
Yeah, you have a lot of great relationships with the players that you've been a part of throughout your career. You've been around some of the most successful players ever. Do you have a certain player from that Diamondbacks team that you've kept in contact and are still close friends with?
Well, I stay in contact with a number of them. I'm on a whatever it's called, like a web connectivity, where whenever anything is happening with one of the guys from that roster, it's all shared. And we've had a few events where, different reunions, 10-year reunion, 20-year reunion, etc. And so it was a unique group of guys, and I really enjoyed all of it.
Yeah. So you win the World Series in 2004. 2004, USA Basketball loses in Athens. It's a tough time for the program. They bring you in. What was your initial thoughts when being offered the job? And were you nervous about representing not only a county or a state, but now an entire nation?
Well, I've never had a problem with being nervous. What I would respond to that statement is basically, if you have confidence in your own ability to get something done, you go about your business. 04 was a big year. I sold my interest in the Suns for personal reasons, for estate planning, etc., for family. It's all about providing for family. I stepped down from baseball, and then took my wife on a trip to Paris, where she was accosted in front of a 5-star hotel in broad daylight, and I found myself in a fight with 2 guys. And we survived all of that. I did get pepper sprayed, which was a new experience for me. But, to add a little humor to the whole thing, I said, it actually felt pretty good to be involved in the fight. It brought me back to my old days in the old neighborhood. I came home from that trip and found out I had prostate cancer. I needed surgery. So I was home recuperating in early 05, January of 05, when David Stern, the then commissioner of the NBA, called. Jerry, how are you? I gave him that report. He says, would you take over USA Basketball? And I'm instinctive. I don't necessarily respond to, well, I need to think about it and I'll get back to you. No, I said, I'll do it, but I have 2 conditions. And he said, what are they? I said, number 1 is full autonomy. I'll pick the coaches, I'll pick the players. He said, done. What's number 2? I said, I don't want to hear about a budget. He didn't like that one. That one, just, and I said, David, are you finished? He said, yes. I said, well, it's still number 2. But don't worry about it. I'll raise the money through sale of sponsorships, etc. And that began a whole new thing for me. And by the way, your point about representing the country didn't get lost with me. It's one thing to represent a school. It's another thing to represent your city, even your state. But when you're representing your country on the international stage, that's a whole different story. I wasn't intimidated by it. I was aware of what that step up really meant. And so I was willing to do that. And I'll tell you, that experience was a great one. We won gold medals in 08, 12, 16, and rather than 20, because of COVID, we had to move it to 21. We won there. We won a couple of world championships in 10 and 14. So a lot of gold medals, and it was a great experience with great individuals and great stories from my repertoire.
What made you ultimately decide to hire Coach K? Because Coach K is a very decorated college basketball coach. Didn't have the experience with the NBA players. Was there any concern about how he might be able to handle that? I'm curious to get your opinion on that.
Well, first of all, I called a meeting of all the former USA gold medal coaches, all the coaches going back to 1960. And then some of the star players, Magic Johnson, Michael Jordan, Jerry West, by way of example. But I had 36 people at a meeting in Chicago to talk about what their experiences were with USA basketball and what they thought individually needed to be done. Everyone was really on the same page. And I had conversations and put things on a board of college coaches, NBA coaches, and we talked through all of them. I knew in advance the two that would end up being the top two would be Coach K on the college side and Popovich from San Antonio on the pro side. So those were the two candidates. When I met with Coach K, who was also a Chicago guy, who I had seen play for Bobby Knight at West Point, the military academy, many years earlier, we were of a same kind of a mind and attitude about what needed to be done, changing the culture, creating a situation where people were proud to represent their country. And so we embarked on a game plan. And I'll tell you, when we landed in Beijing for the Olympics in '08, Coach K and I were sitting together. And as we hit the tarmac, we kind of looked at each other and said, we've put a lot of work into this, but we're ready. We really are ready. And so it was a terrific experience. And winning the gold medal in China, by the way, the first game against China was the most watched television basketball game ever in the history of the game. It still is. Number two, when the moment when you're handing out the medals and the Star Spangled Banner is being raised and the music and so forth, here's how I saw all of that. Very seldom does someone have a game plan, watch it executed, get the desired result like we did. So it was really an extraordinary moment.
Yeah. You've talked about the importance of putting together a team and not just taking the best players and throwing them out there, expecting them to have camaraderie. How hard is it to do with all these NBA players? I'm sure they would want to play on the team. How hard is it to narrow down ultimately the best overall team?
Well, I think we handled it the way we intended to. Number one, I was going to meet with each player that I had interest in, eyeball to eyeball, and just talk about what they needed to do if they wanted to be part of what we were going to do. And so once a couple of guys immediately bought into the vision, then they all talk among themselves. That's just the way it goes. So that first team was really very special in my opinion. The '08 Olympic team. You had Kobe Bryant, and you had LeBron James and Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh and Grant Howard and Chris Paul, by way of example. It was a loaded team, but we also had three guys who were role players. We didn't really want 12 stars, if you will.
Right.
So we had a shooter in Michael Redd from Milwaukee. We had an extra big up front with Carlos Boozer. And Tayshaun Prince was a defender. So, and they all played a role somewhere during the Olympics for the very reason they were selected. And so it was a wonderful experience to go about building that group, and we got the desired result.
Being around players like LeBron, Dwayne Wade, Kobe Bryant, especially when you're in the hotels with them, on the plane with them, is it interesting to see just how they go about their day as far as training and what their schedule looks like? What makes them the cream of the crop when it comes to athletes?
Well, bear in mind that I've always been an athlete, a player, so I've always been around players, as a player, as a coach, as a manager. So I'm not enamored or taken, by surprise. I know what to expect because I've seen it all evolve and develop. But it's pretty evident this way. You know who's doing it the right way and who isn't. You know, it's as simple as that. Colby was such a leader. He got 81 points in a game, regular season game. 3 days later, he came to Phoenix to play the Suns. He came up to my offices at the arena, and he sat down, and I was going to, play him a little bit. And I said, Colby, first of all, he was very interested in being part of the Olympic team, and he had never represented USA basketball before. And he said, I said, Colby, what if I said I'm going to change your role? He said, what do you mean? I said, maybe I don't want you to score. 3 days earlier, he had 81 in the game.
Right.
Okay? He said, well, what do you mean? And I said, well, what if I want you to be a distributor? I want you to pass the ball, not end up shooting the ball. And he says, his response was great. He says, I'll do whatever you want. I just want to be part of this.
Oh,
pretty good from Kobe Bryant.
That's amazing.
He set the tone in Las Vegas at our training camp. If practice was at 9 in the morning, he was in the workout room at 5 o'clock in the morning, getting an extra workout in. And he set the tone, and other players started following him.
Yeah.
Including Wade, including LeBron, including Bosh, all of them.
Yeah. I think that 2008 team really set the tone for the following teams this year.
No question.
This year, I mean, with KD, Steph, LeBron, that 2008 team was instrumental, right? I mean,
it changed the culture. We earned back the respect of the world basketball community, which had been lost. And so it became an in thing to play again.
Yeah.
And represent your country for all the right reasons.
Yeah. Well, now that you are, you've accomplished so much in your life. Now that you're working with GCU, you have the Colangelo College of Business. You're instrumental in helping building up the basketball programs. What does a typical day in your life look like nowadays?
You know what I like about my life in many ways in terms of business, etc., is every call is about something different. It's never monotonous.
Yeah.
I don't get tired about talking about the same thing because there's different things that happen all day long. I'm spending a lot of time in the real estate world. I always had interest in real estate with partners over the years, but when I left downtown, in the teams, I came over to JDM, Jerry, Dave, and Mel. That's what the initials stand for, and it's been really fun and interesting. I would say this. People have the capacity, if they have a certain level of intelligence and they have the work skills and the confidence, you can move your expertise from one subject to another subject. And so same things apply. In the real estate world, you better know your product. You better know who you're dealing with, who you're negotiating with. Well, it's no different than sports. So you want to hire good people to represent you. You want to be involved in properties that are top cabin, which is what we have done. And we've done it in such a way that I've really enjoyed building yet something else. That is a company that, along with my partners, we started from scratch, and we've got $3 billion of assets under management. We raised over $1 billion in equity, not through a third party, but through relationships. And so when I speak to students over at GCU, I'll talk about some of the basic things that you don't get in a textbook.
Yeah.
Which is basically, life is relational. Learn to look people in the eye, shake hands, have a confidence about yourself. And so if you're good at that, it's going to open a lot of doors. Also, be a sponge. Be a sponge in the sense that if you're around people who have made it, done it, listen. There's plenty of time for you to talk. In the meantime, use your ears and learn from those who have already paved the way. So common sense kind of things that I've had a lot of good feedback with the common sense.
That's great advice from Mr. Jerry Colangelo. Mr. Colangelo, thank you so much for sitting down with us.
Thank you. You're welcome.